Imagine the absolute massive volume of data flowing across the Atlantic Ocean every single second. We're talking everything from your social media feeds and online purchases right up to enterprise software and global financial markets. It is, quite literally, the lifeblood of the global digital economy. But what if I told you that the legal framework allowing all of this to happen has already catastrophically collapsed? Not just once, but twice. Welcome to our explainer. Today we're unpacking the precarious legal bridge connecting the European Union and the United States, and we're investigating whether a third collapse is right around the corner.
Okay, let's dive right into this by addressing the existential threat hanging over thousands of companies today. See, every single business that transfers personal data between the EU and the US relies on a very specific regulatory framework to do so legally. If that framework gets invalidated, data flows can freeze overnight. That would throw massive sectors of the economy into total chaos and disrupt digital services we all use every single day. The current framework we have is actually relatively new, but legal experts are already looking at it and asking, is this bridge about to collapse again? To answer that, we're grounding our explainer today in some truly fascinating 2026 research from the Stanford Vienna Transatlantic Technology Law Forum. This paper, which was authored by Jennifer E. Lee, gives us a brilliant and incredibly timely analysis of the shifting landscape of transatlantic privacy law. It specifically looks at a landmark 2025 court decision and the structural vulnerabilities that, well, still haven't been fixed. So here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The transatlantic data dilemma. 2. The history from Schrems 1 to the DPF. 3. The Data Protection Review Court. 4. Independence and EU standards. And finally, 5. The path to a potential Schrems 3.
All right, Part 1, the transatlantic data dilemma. Let's start by looking at the deep, structural friction right at the very heart of this international conflict.
The core divergence really comes down to this massive clash of legal cultures. On one side, you have the European Union, which treats data privacy as a constitutionalized fundamental right under its charter. It's built right in. On the other side, the United States doesn't actually have a comprehensive federal privacy law. Instead, the U.S. relies on a fragmented, sector-specific system. But here's what's really important for our explainer. The U.S. system is heavily intertwined with expansive intelligence-gathering authorities, particularly Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. Section 702 basically allows U.S. intelligence agencies to compel service providers to help acquire the communications of non-U.S. persons located abroad. As you can imagine, this creates quite the conflict.
Moving on to Part 2. History. Schrems 1 to DPF. Let's look at how this exact clash built a historical pattern of total instability. This timeline is essentially a ticking clock of invalidations and renegotiations driven entirely by the EU pushing back against U.S. surveillance practices. In 2015, a case known as Schrems 1 completely invalidated what was called the Safe Harbor Agreement. So the US and EU scrambled, and they created the Privacy Shield. But then in 2020, Schrems 2 struck that down too. Finally, in July 2023, they adopted a third iteration, the EU-US Data Privacy Framework, or DPF. And just recently, in September 2025, an EU court actually upheld the DPF in a case called Lintombe v. Commission.
Now, the crucial point in all of this legal back and forth is this standard of essential equivalence. This is the strict measuring stick the EU uses to judge any American data transfer framework. Now, the EU doesn't demand that the US copy its laws word for word, but it does absolutely require that once EU data lands on American servers, it gets a level of protection that is functionally equal to what it would have inside Europe. In those first two Schrems cases, the courts basically said the U.S. fell way short of this standard because of its surveillance programs and the total lack of judicial redress for EU citizens.
Which brings us to Part 3, the Data Protection Review Court. This is the mechanism that was designed to basically stop this endless cycle of invalidations.
To appease the European courts after Schrems 2, the U.S. had to get creative. They created a completely new system entirely through executive branch actions. First, President Biden signed Executive Order 14086. This explicitly introduced European concepts, specifically necessity and proportionality, into U.S. signals intelligence. Second, they established the Data Protection Review Court, or the DPRC. This was a massive shift. For the very first time, EU citizens actually had a dedicated redress mechanism to file grievances if they felt U.S. intelligence agencies had unlawfully surveilled their data.
And, at first glance, this seemed to work perfectly. In September 2025, the General Court delivered its judgment in Lintombe v. Commission, and they actually dismissed the challenge, confirming the legality of the DPF. The court accepted that the ex post judicial review, which just means the ability to review a case after the surveillance had already happened, provided by this new DPRC, met the requirement for effective judicial protection at that specific time. So for tech companies and data brokers, this 2025 ruling felt like a huge, permanent victory.
But Part 4, Independence and EU Standards. As researchers at Stanford and Vienna highlight, beneath that ruling lies a massive structural fault line. It all revolves around Article 47 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. You see, the EU demands genuine, structurally insulated independence for any court that handles fundamental rights. It's not nearly enough to just slap the word court on a building. It must be protected from external interventions, have security of tenure, meaning judges absolutely cannot be fired just for making unpopular rulings, and it needs to be totally shielded from political pressure or hierarchical constraints.
And there is a really stark contrast here. The U.S. does actually have an independent court for surveillance oversight. It's called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISC. Now, the FISC is a statutorily entrenched court created by Congress, but the DPRC, this new court set up specifically for EU citizens, it's not. It was created entirely by executive order and regulations. It is embedded directly within the U.S. executive branch itself.
As the transatlantic legal scholars at Stanford and Vienna point out, this is a profound vulnerability. Because the DPRC's independence relies purely on executive instruments, it completely bypasses the legislative branch. This means it can be legally modified, narrowed, or even totally revoked by a sitting president without any input or approval from Congress whatsoever. Its existence is legally binding, sure, but its foundation relies fundamentally on whichever administration happens to hold the White House.
Which leads us to the renowned privacy advocate Max Schrems. He is the man who practically single-handedly triggered the last two transatlantic collapses. Following the creation of this new framework, he famously stated that he is, quote, sick and tired of this legal ping-pong. He, along with other critics, characterized these executive branch fixes as superficial adaptations rather than the deep structural changes actually required to meet EU standards of independence.
And that brings us to Part 5, the path to Schrems 3. What are the specific triggers that could cause this whole framework to collapse for a third time?
We have to look impartially at these specific 2025 constitutional stress tests currently playing out in the U.S. because they directly threaten the durability of the DPRC's independence. First up, in early 2025, members of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, the PCLOB, were removed. This deprived the board of its required voting quorum and completely incapacitated its oversight functions right before some key surveillance renewals. Second, there's the December 2025 Supreme Court case, Trump v. Slaughter, which is actively testing the constitutionality of statutory protections against the presidential removal of executive officers. And finally, there's always the looming risk that a future administration simply revokes Executive Order 1406 altogether.
The legal consensus in the Stanford-Vienna research is that durability is the core vulnerability here. Yes, the General Court upheld the DPF in 2025, but they base that on the snapshot of safeguards existing at that exact moment in time. If the U.S. executive branch successfully dismantles these oversight mechanisms, or if the Supreme Court rules that the president can just fire these supposedly independent judges at will, well, the EU courts will likely have absolutely no choice but to rule the DPF invalid.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we have to leave you with this question. Is this transatlantic data bridge finally built on bedrock representing genuine legal convergence between two global powers, or are we relying on a fragile executive branch band-aid, just counting down the days to Schrems 3? The flow of the entire global digital economy really does hang on the answer to that question. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and definitely keep an eye on those U.S. constitutional developments, because the ripples are for sure going to be felt all the way across the Atlantic.